Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. In this week's episode, we're just starting with a conversation that to me, honestly, doesn't really get talked about enough, and that is Steph Curry's longevity. I just think at 37 years old, to be still performing at such a level that only a handful of players in NBA history have ever touched at his age, I just think it says a lot about what sustained greatness really looks like in the skill-focused scope of things. Not relying fully on your athletic superiority over the league. And so we're going to start off with that conversation. After that, I'm going to be getting into something that I've been paying close attention to over the first few weeks. And these are the best duos in the NBA right now. So not just the flashy pairings or the big names, but the certified combinations that actually drive top tier winning basketball at the highest level. And those very pairings as well that have hinted that in the first month of basketball, just what we've seen. And a few of these 1-2 combos have clearly separated themselves, and I'll be ranking my top 3 so far. But let's backtrack and get straight into it by diving into Steph Curry, who has been absolutely fantastic to start the year in general. But for being a 37-year-old in year 17, Steph has now reached a level far greater than any other point guard that we've ever seen at his current age. The conditioning for Steph has always been harped on, but it's starting to get pretty out of hand now. 29 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists on 20 shots a game and 12 threes attempted a game. And so that legitimate volume is exceptionally hard to even think about getting anywhere near, especially at that age of 37. And he's still willing out games through just his sheer ability to generate high quality looks at such an instrumental volume. And besides, maybe Jokic, this guy is the most gravitational player in basketball. But also at this mature age as well, Steph is at a point where he understands how to utterly maximize the value of his presence and the pull that he has on any defense, to make himself so hyper effective whilst also being able to save his legs for the lift, the separation, and present the presenting that he needs to get the quality shots off with as well. So it's an IQ shift as well with him over the past few years, but he's honestly still one of the best screeners and cutters in basketball when we're talking about the value of his movement. But it's also just the on-ball juice that he still gives that is for this relatively on-demand on-ball Warriors roster. It just makes this longevity landscape just so absurd right now. To open up the year, he's had 3 40 pieces, and he's had multiple games where he just straight wills out these high quality shots down the stretch of games. And he's getting to the rim the most that he has since 2021. And he is looking generally invigorated to actually make himself, frequently this downhill creator with still someone like a point guard with great strength, great deception, and still extraordinary touch around the rim. And so to me, he is still a top 5 player on the planet just by his sheer value, his presence, and just the floor and ceiling raising components. But just the longevity that he has presented over the years, I think cements him onto that Mount Rushmore discussion of longevity GOATs. Well, you do have guys obviously LeBron is the longevity GOAT, but on the actual Mount Rushmore, he's up there with names like Kareem, Kevin Durant, Karl Malone, Tim Duncan. And with the Warriors, I just think part of why I did view them as my 6th favorite contender this season, even though they have all the age concerns and they sometimes lack with the firepower department on the offensive end, it's because of their mix of having that stable floor as a team, which stems from mostly from that pristine system and the efficient focused ball and player movement style of initiation, but as well as their base and their IQ and their court awareness between the core 4 guys and what that gives them. That's their floor. But in terms of their ceiling, why I do have them in my top 6, much of that is to do with specifically what Steph can do as an offensive magician still at this point. And with the level of play that Steph can still reach on any given night, I just think the Warriors are a pretty safe bet to make that top 4 in the tough Western Conference, more so than teams like the Lakers, a team who don't have the same projected floor, just with the gap in defensive personnel, gap in speed. I think that the Warriors would beat out the Spurs towards the end of the year in the regular season standings as well. I don't think the Spurs really have the same ceiling just with the off-ball powerhouse functioning that the Warriors can actively reach with Steph. And for every chance that the Warriors have of hoisting the trophy, that alone is a major testament to Steph and his ability to, at age 37, still level to this obscene megastar level on any given night. And the time we have to appreciate his masterful career resume is certainly slowing down. But Steph is certainly maximizing this contending window, so we may have at least another year to appreciate possibly the greatest point guard of all time to what many fans believe. And I just think what this guy is doing has just been unbelievable to watch. Now, moving away from that Steph glaze, we're going to move on to our top 3 duos. So now just a fun segment that I wanted to hit off, which was ranking based. And I'm just going to be going through who I think are the best 3 duos in basketball right now, just based off what I've seen so far from this regular season stint. This isn't in a vacuum based ranking, and it's more just about what we've seen in this specific month of basketball and just who looks the most cohesive, balanced, and just the outright dominant out of these star pairings that we have across the league. And in terms of contributing to winning as well, but also your versatility of impact between the two guys. Like obviously, typically in this conversation, you'd have duos like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and Tyrese Haliburton and Siakam might be pushed up here. Luka, LeBron, Shea and Jalen Williams. Those pairs would usually be in this conversation, but obviously with the injuries certainly making their way across the stars, I think it's just a fun time to take time and appreciate other duos that are making their mark to start the year. And so starting with number 3, my third best duo in the NBA right now, I have the pairing of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Chet Holmgren, who really only don't rank high for me purely due to the lack of, the pure individual dominant side, mostly from Holmgren's perspective, when comparing to the other 2 duos that I do have up here. But this duo, in my opinion, has definitely overperformed. We obviously knew the jump that Holmgren had to take for OKC to build upon their regular season success of last year, especially with Jalen Williams missing significant time. But Holmgren has made the offensive jump needed to help OKC float the general tide of the regular season, albeit an easy schedule overall. But he's been absolutely enormous for them. And then obviously, SGA is the reason for the duo being top 3. Obviously, it's not really what Chet has done. Obviously SGA, he's the MVP frontrunner for me. OKC, 16-1, and they just look like an absolute juggernaut of the NBA. And in large part is because SGA to me is still the second best player on the planet, and someone who has seemingly leveled up once again, just building upon what was already an all-time dominant point guard season last year. And he started off already so great, averaging 32, 5, and 7 on a career-best 60% effective field goal percentage. So just a masterful offensive basketball player with his transcendent scoring repertoire and just the shot-hunting diversity that he brings. And with his the extra experience as a game manager, just being able to make those basic reads off his downhill gravity and just the understanding the attention that he gathers, that has made him so utterly sustainable as that offensive engine. And his efficiency in terms of the time at which he's actually playing. I mean, SGA he's doing this in 32 minutes a game. And obviously, despite the double OT battles that he had played in earlier in the year, and there doesn't really seem to be an answer for the actual scoring surge that he's actually giving to teams. And when also adding in the work that Holmgren has done with the comfortability as a driver and just working through truly maximizing his use of those embedded advantages that he has with the over-the-top size that he has to protect his handle, his gather and releases. The actual duo has been actually unbelievable this year, and I think they've actually flown under the radar to a degree. Holmgren this year, in terms of improvements, on-ball improvements, he's scoring 68% on drives compared to 43% from last year. And so growing more comfortable with the double big look and just feeling more confident going against thinner forwards and how he approaches dissecting players with a more and more refined isolation handle, more refined footwork counters, that has been truly on display for Chet this season. And it's just been good to see Holmgren actually continue putting in the work despite already achieving the ultimate goal of that title last year. And for just how this duo complements each other, I just think the SGA-Chet duo to me has been excellent to watch so far, as they do lead the clear best team in basketball despite the injuries that they've also had across the roster. Now, my second best duo in basketball this season, however, belongs to the Houston Rockets pair of Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun, who I believe to be the most balanced pair talent-wise and just how they both scale in the current player rankings. But for me, it's not just the talent that they both bring, but it's more about how they complement each other as well. It's the Chet Shea thing. And they've led a highly physical and what has perceived to be a top tier defensive squad as well. But they've done this by actually supercharging the offense so dramatically that they've actually been the best offense in basketball with a 123 offensive rating while still being a top 10 defense in basketball, which was their original identity. And just a shift towards the offense as well that just makes this team notably scarier for both Denver and OKC when it comes to a 7-game matchup. But with Sengun, I mean, just the way that these two have meshed in that pick and roll has been so beautiful to see. Just leveraging their different strengths and their imposing traits. You know, for Sengun out of the two-man game, it's that downhill power, the momentum, the physicality, which is just so hard to deny. And just his ability to finish on like those off angles and his variety of soft touch looks paired with the passing strength. That just gives him so much rolling gravity. And for Kevin Durant, I mean, that pull-up shooting gravity is still top 3 in the NBA with just how sharp and precise his intermediate shot making still is. He's still making 46% of his mid-range looks and 44% on pull-ups as well. That is absolutely instrumental for the actual gravity piece of things in a team that we perceive to actually be a really like poor spacing unit. And though KD can struggle handling, you know, and getting viable rim pressure against high ball pressure point of attack defenders, you know, that obviously is a major limitation to that two-man foundation for their offense and for Houston's overall half-court offense. The actual duo themselves between Sengun and KD has been absolutely tremendous, just churning out more than sufficient offensive results between their creation, between their gravity, and just the matchup problem that they can be against any defense. You know, Houston's 10-4, and they've held up more than good defensively. I mean, just with the IQ, the individual abilities to contribute to a highly physical and daring defensive structure. And just so far in this regular season patch, from what we've seen, I believe this to be the second best duo in the NBA right now. And just what they've done actually positively contributing to both ends of the floor and the new ceiling that they've been able to give Houston this year and the actual championship outlook that this team has now, I think that certifies them as a top 3 duo in the NBA right now. But moving on to them, I think like the best duo in basketball to me has remained pretty much the same over the past few years. And for me, it goes to the greatest two-man tandem of this generation in Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic once again, who don't exactly own the best statistical offense. But to me, I think it's pretty clear that the Nuggets currently have the most resilient half-court offense floating around the NBA, which I believe to be the most valuable trait for a team who want a championship outlook. Now, the stats to start for Jamal Murray's side: 23 points, 5 rebounds, and 7 assists. So basically, his highest scoring output of his career on 47, 36, 90 splits. And so the efficiency hasn't been as stellar tier as usual for Jamal, but he has still put on an absolute display for the peak shape that he is currently in relative to his standards. You know, this is the most athletic and explosive of a Jamal Murray that you'll see to start any year. And his shot touch, the lift, the separation generally looks as polished as typical with Jamal. And he's within the arc shot polish as well. That looks as good as usual. And he's been legitimately one of the best ISO scorers in basketball, ranking in the 89th percentile, scoring at 1.22 points per possession. And in pick and roll, it's the same typical stellar output as well. He's top 10 in volume possessions, ranking in the 87th percentile, 1.08 points per possession. So he looks absolutely incredible. And his fit next to Jokic just gives the actual duo the boost in aggregate value that of what they actually bring. And then obviously on Jokic's part, I mean, Nikola is just topping up on what he already achieved last year after already having the greatest individual offensive regular season campaign that we've ever seen. And now he's just bolstering the efficiency numbers far beyond our comprehension while still matching around that same volume of scoring output. Right now, Jokic is like, these numbers are absolutely absurd. He's making 78% of his looks in the restricted area, 64% of his looks in the paint non-restricted area, 71% in the mid-range, 41% on those above the break threes, 65% on hooks, and that does round to a staggering 69% effective field goal percentage for an average of 30, 13, and 11. And these aren't minor improvements as well with the efficiency bumps on those numbers I said before, but these are large-scale bumps in the efficiency metrics, and these are just adding to the absurd resume that Jokic has already cemented as the greatest offensive player of all time. And this duo is just the perfect mix of stable decision-making, strong ball handling, a physical identity, extraordinary shot diversity, and just efficiency, and just possibly the greatest half-court offensive pair that the game has ever seen, just with their pick and roll prevalence and their ability to both pick apart matchups out of ISOs, post-ups each, whilst also offering plus value off the ball. And so Denver are 12-4, and just the stability of both Murray and Jokic to contribute to at least a competent, cohesive defensive scheme centered around a lot of zone and strong side help that has made this duo the most resilient and matchup dependent for yet another year. And they look to be the best duo in basketball once again, just with the way that they've opened up the year. And, so that's where I'll wrap it up today. Just absolute pinnacle basketball that we are seeing from the Denver Nuggets and Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And I think they look like the best tandem in basketball. Now, just to recap today's episode, we spoke about Steph Curry originally at the top and just how he continues to redefine what longevity looks like in the NBA. Still playing at a top 5 level at age 37. And he's still blending defenses with just the same way he did about a decade ago now. And it's rare to see greatness age this well. And we are witnessing something we may not see again for a long time. And then obviously for the duos part, when it comes to this season, the elite duos for me right now are SGA and Chet Holmgren, who I think are absolutely setting the standard for the actual legacy that they're going to imprint for this OKC dynasty that they're trying to establish. Sengun and KD were my second best duo in the league, emerging as that terrifying offensive pairing. And then Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic proving once again why their chemistry is absolutely generational and why they may be the best half-court offensive duo of all time. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow the podcast and check out @CasualNBAFanatic on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube for more weekly breakdowns, daily reels, and deep dives. I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.